The emerald light of the Jade Shield Auditorium cast an eerie glow over the assembled delegates. 700 representatives from across the galaxy sat in tiered rows, their murmurs creating a discordant symphony of concern. Emergency council sessions were rare. This was only the fourth in 3 centuries, and the tension hung heavy in the air. Ambassador Riley Martinez of Earth entered through the main doors, casually sipping from a ceramic mug emblazoned with the phrase, "mostly harmless." The human appeared remarkably calm for someone representing a planet facing imminent invasion. "Ambassador Martinez," called out Delegate Vexar, his translucent tentacles quivering with indignation. "How can you be so nonchalant? The Corfac Armada is less than 12 hours from breaching your solar system's asteroid belt." Riley took another sip, made a slight face at the bitter taste, and shrugged. "That situation has been addressed." The auditorium erupted into chaos. Voices in 100 languages demanded explanations. Translators struggled to keep pace, and council security drones hovered nervously near the ceiling, their sensors blinking in agitation. "Silence!" The voice of Council Elder Tessara cut through the din like a plasma torch through hull plating. The ancient Morian rose from her seat, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the light as she fixed her compound eyes on the human ambassador. "Explain yourself, Martinez." The Corfac battle fleet consists of 847 warships, including 32 planet crackers. What precisely do you mean by addressed? Riley placed the coffee mug on the podium and tapped a small device on her wrist. The central holographic display flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional tactical map of Earth's solar system. Red triangles representing the Corfac fleet appeared at the edge, moving steadily toward the 3rd planet. "This was the situation 6 hours ago," Riley said, her voice eerily calm. "And this," she tapped again, "is the situation now." The red triangles vanished, replaced by a scattered field of tiny green dots. "What is this?" demanded Delegate Zorthan of the Rigelian Compact, leaning forward with his 4 eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Some form of sensor malfunction?" "No," Riley replied. "Those are debris fields. The Corfac Armada no longer exists. It persisted for exactly 47 seconds after crossing our defensive perimeter." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the soft hum of the environmental systems. "Impossible," whispered someone, the word echoing through the chamber. Riley shrugged again. "I'd be happy to provide sensor logs and debris analysis to confirm. We've already dispatched recovery vessels to collect samples for anyone who wishes to verify independently." "What weapon could possibly—" Elder Tessara's voice trailed off, her compound eyes widening with the first emotion Riley had ever seen the ancient being display: fear. "Not a weapon," Riley corrected. "A defensive system. Operation Sleeping Giant. We've never had cause to activate it before today." 10,000 light-years away, Admiral Sarah Thompson stood on the command deck of Orbital Defense Station Molir, watching the aftermath unfold on her tactical displays. Debris from the Corfac fleet continued to expand outward, a cloud of molecular fragments, where minutes before had been the most powerful invasion force assembled in the last century. "Confirm all defense platforms have returned to standby," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of what they had just done. "All 18,000 molecular disruption platforms confirm standby status." "Admiral," her executive officer reported, "no anomalous readings. System performance was within 0.03% of projected parameters." Sarah nodded, feeling a complex mixture of relief, pride, and something darker. Humanity had just revealed its hand after 3 decades of secrecy. The carefully constructed facade of Earth as a minor, barely spacefaring civilization had been shattered in less than a minute. "Establish secure communication with General Webb," she ordered. "It's time for Phase 2. In an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Marcus Webb watched as the giant screens displayed real-time updates from defense systems that, until today, had been Earth's most closely guarded secret. When the first extraterrestrial contact had occurred 32 years ago, humanity had made a critical decision. While publicly embracing the galactic community with apparent openness, they had privately invested enormous resources into developing defensive technologies, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The molecular disruption platforms, completely invisible to all known detection methods, had been seeded throughout the solar system. Each one was capable of disassembling matter at the molecular level within its operational radius. Together, they formed an impenetrable shield around Earth and its colonies. "Communication established with Admiral Thompson, sir," his aide announced. Webb adjusted his uniform and faced the screen. "Sarah, I see our sleeping giant has finally woken up." "Indeed," the Admiral replied, her image slightly distorted by the quantum encryption. "The cat's well and truly out of the bag now. We're already detecting increased communications traffic throughout the sector. Everyone's talking." "As expected," Webb nodded. "The council session?" "Ambassador Martinez is handling it. Stage 2, preparations are complete on our end. Defense networks Jupiter through Neptune are at full readiness. The Mars contingency has been activated." "Good." Webb stroked his salt and pepper beard thoughtfully. "And our insurance policy?" Sarah's expression hardened slightly. "The Prometheus protocols are primed and ready. If anyone makes a move against Earth, we can extend our defensive reach considerably further than just our solar system." Webb nodded again, hoping it wouldn't come to that. The Prometheus protocols were the darkest part of Earth's defensive strategy, a network of stealth platforms positioned near major galactic powers, capable of the same molecular disruption as the home system defenses. A last resort that he prayed they'd never need to use. Back in the Jade Shield auditorium, chaos had given way to a tense, horrified silence as the implications of Riley's announcement sank in. "You've been concealing this technology," Elder Tessara finally said, her voice hollow. "For how long?" "Development began immediately following first contact," Riley replied matter-of-factly. "Deployment was completed approximately 12 years ago. This violates 17 different provisions of the Galactic Charter," sputtered Delegate Quarks, a methane breather whose containment suit bubbled frantically with his agitation. "Technology sharing, weapons limitations, transparency protocols." "Actually, it doesn't," Riley interrupted, pulling a data crystal from her pocket and inserting it into the podium. The holographic display shifted to show the text of the Galactic Charter. Article 7, Section 12, Paragraph 3. Member species retain the right to develop and deploy defensive systems within their sovereign territory without disclosure, provided such systems are non-aggressive in nature and employed solely for the protection of recognized homeworlds and colonies. Riley highlighted the text with a gesture. "We've never deployed these systems outside our solar system. We've never used them aggressively. Today's activation was in direct response to an unprovoked invasion force approaching our homeworld." But the scale," stammered Delegate Vexar. "To destroy an entire battle fleet in seconds." "The scale is precisely why this was a defensive action," Riley countered. "The Corfac Armada was capable of rendering Earth uninhabitable. Our response was proportional to the threat." Elder Tessara's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. "The Council must deliberate on this development. We will reconvene in 3 hours. Ambassador Martinez, your presence will be required." Riley nodded, collected her coffee mug, and walked calmly from the chamber, leaving behind 700 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy in a state of barely controlled panic. As the doors closed behind her, she allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. The news spread across the galaxy at the speed of quantum communication. A minor species, barely a century into faster-than-light travel, had obliterated one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy without apparent effort. In the corridors of power across 1,000 worlds, emergency meetings were convened. Military analysts desperately tried to understand what had happened. Intelligence agencies searched their archives for any hint of Earth's true capabilities that they might have missed. On the Corfac homeworld, the High Command fell into disarray. Their entire offensive capability had been wiped out in less time than it took to give an order. Panicked leaders immediately dispatched diplomatic vessels to Earth with offers of reparations, non-aggression pacts, and pleas for mercy. They weren't alone. Within hours, 17 previously hostile or indifferent powers had reached out to Earth with offers of alliance or tribute. The balance of power was shifting so rapidly that political analysts couldn't keep pace. Sarah Thompson watched these developments from her command center with grim satisfaction. "Humanity spent most of its history fighting itself," she remarked to her executive officer. "We learned the hard way that peace through superior firepower is sometimes the only peace you get." "Do you think they'll try to retaliate?" the young officer asked, eyeing the incoming diplomatic requests. Sarah shook her head. "Not directly. They're too scared now. But the Council, they'll try to contain us through legislation and political maneuvering. That's why Phase 2 is so important." In his mountain facility, General Webb was overseeing the final preparations for that very phase. Holographic displays showed the positions of Earth's defensive assets throughout the solar system, now openly revealed, but still just as lethal. Another screen displayed a countdown, 2:17:43, until the Council reconvened. "Status report on the diplomatic package," he ordered. "Ambassador Martinez has received the final draft and supporting materials," his aide reported. "The Galactic Peace and Security Initiative is ready for presentation." Webb nodded, studying the document that represented humanity's boldest gambit yet. "And our response options if they reject it?" The aide hesitated, then brought up another screen showing 5 scenarios, color-coded from green to red. The red option, Prometheus Protocol full activation, hung ominously at the bottom of the list. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Webb said quietly. "For everyone's sake." 2 hours and 55 minutes after she had left, Riley Martinez returned to the Jade Shield Auditorium. This time, she carried no coffee mug, but instead, a slim portfolio containing the future of galactic politics. The chamber was noticeably different. Many delegates who had been present earlier were now attending virtually, their holographic avatars flickering in their seats. Security had been increased tenfold, though Riley noted with amusement that none of the additional measures would be effective against Earth's technology. "Ambassador Martinez," Elder Tessara began without preamble, "the Council has reviewed your actions and the relevant charter provisions. While we acknowledge your technical compliance with Article 7, the spirit of the Galactic Charter has been fundamentally violated by Earth's concealment of such destructive capability." Riley remained impassive, waiting. "Therefore," Tessara continued, "the Council proposes the following resolution. Earth will immediately disclose all details of its defensive technology to the Galactic Science Authority for evaluation and potential shared implementation. Furthermore, control of the system will be transferred to a neutral third party to ensure—" "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Riley interrupted smoothly. A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembly. "This is not a negotiation," Delegate Zorthan snapped. "The Council has reached consensus." "Actually," Riley said, opening her portfolio, "I have a counter-proposal that I believe will better serve galactic stability in light of recent events." She placed a small projector on the podium, and a new holographic document appeared in the center of the chamber. "The Galactic Peace and Security Initiative," she announced, "a comprehensive framework for ensuring the safety and prosperity of all galactic citizens." "We have not authorized," began Elder Tessara, but Riley continued as if she hadn't heard. "The initiative establishes Earth as the primary security provider for the galactic community. Our defensive technology will remain under human control, but will be extended to protect all worlds that sign the accompanying mutual defense treaty. The auditorium erupted again, voices shouting in outrage, confusion, and, from some quarters, interest. "This is unprecedented," Delegate Corks exclaimed. "You're proposing to become the de facto military power for the entire galaxy." "We're proposing to extend our proven defensive capabilities to protect your worlds as we protect our own," Riley corrected. "In exchange for reasonable security contributions and adherence to basic humanitarian principles." "And if we refuse?" Elder Tessara asked, her voice cutting through the noise. Riley's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes hardened slightly. "That would be unfortunate. Earth has no desire for conflict, but we are prepared to exercise our right to lawful self-defense, as outlined in Article 12 of the Charter." The implied threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Everyone present understood what lawful self-defense would mean against powers that rejected Earth's protection. "This is extortion," hissed Delegate Vexar. "This is reality," Riley countered. "The galaxy has been dominated by military powers, willing to dispatch armadas against younger species. Today, that paradigm changed. We're offering a more stable alternative. Protection for all, under a transparent system of mutual defense." "How transparent?" asked a voice from the back. Delegate Noor of the Aldebarani Federation, one of the few powers that had consistently treated Earth fairly since first contact. Riley nodded respectfully in her direction. "The initiative includes provisions for oversight committees, regular inspections of Earth's defensive systems by authorized representatives, and a clear charter of rights for all member worlds." "And how long do we have to consider this initiative?" Elder Tessara asked, her compound eyes unreadable. Riley checked her timepiece with deliberate casualness. "The Council will have one standard hour to vote on acceptance. After that time, Earth will consider any non-signatory powers to be potential threats and will implement appropriate security measures." The chamber exploded into pandemonium. Security drones swooped lower, their pacification fields at the ready, as delegates shouted, threatened, and in some cases, began urgent communications with their homeworlds. Riley stood calmly at the podium, the eye of a storm that was reshaping galactic politics by the second. On Orbital Defense Station Malir, Admiral Thompson watched the proceedings through a secure feed. Her senior staff gathered around the tactical table. "They won't like being cornered," her executive officer observed. "No one does," Sarah agreed. "But they'll calculate the odds just like the Corfax should have done. They've seen what happens to those who threaten us." "And if they call our bluff?" asked her intelligence chief. "The Prometheus protocols are in place, but actually using them against multiple major powers." Sarah's expression remained stony. "It won't come to that. They're politicians. Self-preservation is their primary skill." In the mountain facility, General Webb watched the same feed, his face grim. Decades of planning, of maintaining the facade of humanity as a minor player while building the most formidable defensive system the galaxy had ever seen, had led to this moment. "Status of all defense platforms?" he asked. "Green across the board, sir. The solar system shield is at 100%. The extended assets are also ready if needed." Webb nodded, hoping fervently that the extended assets, the secretly deployed disruption platforms near major galactic powers, would remain dormant. Using them would mean the failure of diplomacy and the beginning of something much darker. "Have the Mars contingency forces been briefed?" "Yes, sir. The fleet is on standby. If any hostile forces approach from outside the solar system, they'll be ready to respond while our defensive platforms handle the primary threat." Webb allowed himself a small smile. 30 years ago, we were afraid of being conquered because we were too primitive. Now, they're afraid of us because we're too inventive. Funny how things work out. As the Council's deliberation time ticked down, the atmosphere in the Jade Shield Auditorium grew increasingly tense. Delegates huddled in groups. Quantum communicators buzzed with urgent messages to homeworlds. and more than a few representatives had activated personal shields, a violation of Council protocol that went unremarked in the crisis. Riley Martinez stood patiently at the podium, occasionally checking her timepiece. With 15 minutes remaining, Elder Tessara approached her privately. "You must understand what you're doing," the ancient Morian said, her voice pitched low. "For 1,000 years, the Council has maintained balance among the galactic powers. Your initiative would disrupt that entire system." "The system was already broken," Riley replied quietly. "A balanced galaxy wouldn't have sent an armada to destroy a younger species simply for declining a resource extraction treaty. The Corfac felt entitled to our asteroid belt, and when we refused to surrender it, they launched a fleet. How many other young civilizations have been bullied or destroyed because they lacked our foresight?" Tessara's crystalline form shimmered, a sign of emotional distress in her species. "There have been incidents. But what you propose is replacing one form of domination with another." "No," Riley shook her head. "We're offering protection with transparency and oversight. More than that, we're offering consequences for aggression, something the Council has failed to provide. And if we refuse, will Earth become the very monster it claims to be protecting others from?" Riley met the Elder's compound gaze steadily. "I sincerely hope we don't have to find out." As the final minutes ticked away, the Council delegates returned to their seats, the chamber quieted, an unnatural stillness falling over the assembly. "The time for decision has arrived," Elder Tessara announced, her voice carrying a weight of finality. "The Council will now vote on the Galactic Peace and Security Initiative as presented by Earth. All in favor, signify by illuminating your station in blue. All opposed, in red." For a long moment, no lights appeared. Then, slowly, stations began to glow, mostly blue, with scattered patches of red. The holographic tally above the central podium climbed steadily. 200, 300, 400 in favor. When the voting closed, the result was unmistakable. 612 in favor, 88 opposed. "The initiative is accepted," Elder Tessara announced, her voice betraying no emotion. "Earth is hereby recognized as the primary security provider for the Galactic Council and all signatory worlds. May the stars witness that we have chosen wisely." Riley bowed slightly. "Earth accepts this responsibility with humility and determination. The defensive shield that protects our world will now extend to yours. No power, no matter how ancient or technologically advanced, will be permitted to threaten the peace we establish today." As she gathered her materials, Riley added, "Implementation protocols will be transmitted immediately. I suggest that representatives of non-signatory powers contact their governments urgently. Earth's defensive posture toward non-signatories will adjust at the end of this standard day." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked from the chamber, leaving behind a transformed galaxy, one in which humanity, barely a blip in cosmic history, had suddenly become its dominant power. On her way to the transportation hub, Riley's secure communicator chimed. "Martinez," she answered. "It's done," came Admiral Thompson's voice. "The Council folded exactly as predicted. Defensive network expansion is already underway. Any problems with the non-signatories?" "Not yet. We're tracking increased fleet movements from several of them, but nothing that suggests immediate hostile action. Most are already sending diplomatic envoys." Riley nodded to herself. "And General Webb?" "Implementing Phase 3 now. The Mars fleet launches in 6 hours. Peacekeeping forces to assist with the transition." "Good. I'm returning to Earth now. We'll need to prepare for the influx of diplomatic traffic." As she ended the call, Riley allowed herself a moment of reflection. In the span of a single day, humanity had transformed from a species under threat to the dominant power in the galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on her. Earth had spent centuries divided against itself, nations and ideologies in constant conflict, only to unite perfectly when faced with external threats. "We learned from our mistakes," she murmured to herself. "That's something, at least." 12 hours later, Admiral Sarah Thompson stood on the observation deck of Orbital Defense Station Molière, watching as the first diplomatic vessels from across the galaxy approached Earth. Each had been carefully scanned, their weapon systems verified as inactive, before being permitted to enter the defensive perimeter. Below, the blue-green world spun serenely, oblivious to its new status as the center of galactic power. Cities glittered on the night side, their lights a testament to human perseverance. "Admiral," her executive officer approached, offering a data tablet. "The last of the non-signatory powers has requested terms for joining the initiative. All major galactic governments are now aligned." Sarah accepted the tablet, scanning the details quickly. "So it's done. Not a single shot fired. Well, beyond the Corfac fleet." "Yes, ma'am. General Webb has sent his congratulations and requests your presence at the first meeting of the Joint Security Council tomorrow." Sarah nodded, still looking at Earth below. "The politicians will take over now, setting up the structures, writing the rules, turning our defensive necessity into an administrative apparatus. Is that a bad thing?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "No, it's the natural progression. We built the sword, but governance is the shield. Both are necessary." In his mountain facility, General Marcus Webb was overseeing the final preparations for what would become the headquarters of Earth's new galactic security forces. Holographic displays showed the positions of defensive assets now being acknowledged throughout the solar system, while others tracked the deployment of the first human peacekeeping vessels to key locations across the galaxy. "General," his aide approached with a secure communication device. "Ambassador Martinez for you." Webb accepted the device. "Riley, congratulations on a masterful performance." "Thank you, Marcus," came the reply. "Though I suspect I had the easier job. You and Sarah did the heavy lifting for 30 years. We all played our parts," Webb said diplomatically. "What's the mood at the council now?" "Subdued. Reality is sinking in. Several delegates have already approached me privately about preferential treatment for their worlds." Webb snorted. "Of course they have. Politics never changes, regardless of the species." "No, it doesn't," Riley agreed. "But the fundamental equation has, for the first time in galactic history, the aggressive powers are on the defensive. The bullies are looking over their shoulders." "And we're the biggest bully now," Webb observed, not without irony. "A benevolent one." "I hope," Riley replied. "That's the plan, anyway. Equal protection, transparent governance, humanitarian standards across all worlds." "Noble goals," Webb acknowledged. "Let's hope we can live up to them." After ending the call, Webb turned back to the tactical displays. The red dots representing the few remaining hostile forces were already changing to yellow as diplomatic channels opened. Soon, if all went according to plan, the galaxy would be unified under human protection, peaceful, stable, secure. And all it had taken was the ability to destroy any threat in 47 seconds. Webb wondered, not for the first time, if they had done the right thing. Earth had secured its safety and risen to unprecedented power through the development of a technology that could render entire fleets into molecular dust. Would they be corrupted by that power, as so many human civilizations had been throughout history? "Time will tell," he murmured to himself, watching as another red dot turned yellow. "Time will tell." Across the galaxy, beings of all species absorbed the new reality. The human homeworld, once thought to be a minor backwater of little consequence, was now the center of galactic security. The species that many had dismissed as primitive had revealed itself to be anything but. On the Corfac homeworld, the remaining military leadership faced tribunals for their disastrous decision to threaten Earth. Their society, built on millennia of military conquest, struggled to adapt to a galaxy where aggression was suddenly a losing strategy. In the highest towers of the Rigelian Compact, ancient strategists who had manipulated galactic politics for centuries found themselves facing a paradigm they couldn't control. Some advocated acceptance and adaptation. Others, more desperate measures to undermine Earth's newfound authority. On 1,000 worlds, ordinary citizens went about their lives, many unaware of the power shift that had occurred, others celebrating or mourning depending on their circumstances. For species that had suffered under the aggression of stronger powers, Earth's ascendance offered hope. For those who had benefited from the old order, uncertainty loomed. And on Earth itself, the general population was only beginning to learn the truth, that their leaders had spent 3 decades building a defensive system of unprecedented power, and had now leveraged that system to establish humanity as the galaxy's preeminent power. In a secure conference room in Geneva, Riley Martinez met with the Earth Security Council, the 12 individuals who had overseen the 30-year strategy that had culminated in today's events. "The Galactic Peace and Security Initiative has been accepted," she reported formally. "Earth is now recognized as the primary security provider for all major galactic powers. The few holdouts are expected to join within days." "And the defensive network expansion?" asked the council chair, an elderly woman whose name was known to fewer than 20 people on the planet. "Proceeding on schedule," Riley confirmed. Admiral Thompson reports that the molecular disruption platforms are being deployed to protect all signatory worlds as promised. The Mars fleet has launched to establish the first peacekeeping bases. "Excellent," the chair nodded. "And the contingency measures?" Riley's expression tightened slightly. "The Prometheus protocols remain active but dormant. General Webb believes we should maintain them as insurance until the new security structure is firmly established." Several council members exchanged glances, but no one objected. The Prometheus protocols, secretly deployed molecular disruption platforms near the homeworlds of potential adversaries, represented the darkest aspect of Earth's strategy, a last resort that they hoped would never be needed. "Very well," the chair said finally. "We stand at a crossroads of history. Humanity has secured not only its survival, but its primacy in the galaxy. The responsibility before us is enormous." "Indeed," agreed another council member. "We must ensure that the power we now wield is used justly. The temptation to abuse it will be significant. That's why the initiative includes oversight provisions," Riley pointed out. "Transparency, checks and balances, representation for all signatory worlds." "On paper," the chair noted dryly. "In reality, Earth holds the keys to the kingdom. We must be vigilant against our own worst instincts." The meeting continued late into the night, as the architects of humanity's rise to power grappled with the implications of their success. The defensive strategy they had implemented had worked perfectly, perhaps too perfectly. Now, they faced the challenge of wielding their newfound authority without becoming the very thing they had sought to defend against. As dawn broke over Geneva, Riley stood at the window of her apartment, watching the sky lighten. In a few hours, she would meet with the first wave of galactic representatives arriving to establish their embassies under the new order. The diplomatic dance would begin in earnest. Alliances, trade agreements, security arrangements, all revolving around Earth as the new center of power. Her secure communicator chimed. "Martinez," she answered. "It's Sarah. We've got a situation developing in the Proxima system. One of the non-signatory powers is testing the boundaries, a small fleet approaching the defensive perimeter around the human colony there." Riley tensed. "Hostile intentions?" "Unclear. They're maintaining a deliberate course but haven't powered weapons. Could be a probe to see how we respond." "Options. Standard protocol would be to activate the disruption platforms if they cross the boundary. But given the current diplomatic situation," Riley considered quickly. "No. We need to demonstrate restraint as well as strength. Deploy a response fleet, make visual contact, and issue a clear warning. If they withdraw, escort them to the boundary. If they continue, then you have authorization for minimal defensive action. Understood, Sarah acknowledged. I'll keep you updated. As she ended the call, Riley reflected on the fragility of peace. They had achieved an unprecedented victory, galactic security without a shot fired. But maintaining that peace would require constant vigilance, wise decision-making, and the strength to show restraint when possible. The challenge ahead was monumental: to wield humanity's newfound power justly, to protect without dominating, to lead without tyranny. The road would be difficult, filled with crises large and small, tests of their principles and resolve. But for the first time in human history, they faced these challenges from a position of unprecedented strength. The species that had spent millennia fighting itself had finally united to secure its place among the stars. And it had taken just 47 seconds to change everything. In the observation room of Orbital Defense Station Malir, Admiral Sarah Thompson watched as the response fleet moved into position near the Proxima boundary. The non-signatory vessels had slowed their approach, but not yet altered course. "This is how it begins," she murmured to her executive officer. "The real test isn't winning power. It's how you use it afterward." The officer nodded thoughtfully. "For what it's worth, Admiral, I believe we'll pass that test." Sarah smiled faintly, her eyes still on the tactical display where human vessels faced off against alien counterparts in the silent void of space. "So do I," she said quietly. "So do I." And across the galaxy, a new era dawned, an era of Pax Humana, enforced by invisible guardians that could reduce a battle fleet to dust in 47 seconds, but tempered by the hope that such power would never again need to be demonstrated.